So, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Office Hours. And I'm so delighted and honored to have my friend Chris Brogan here today. And I have such an emotional attachment to Chris because he has been such a pioneer and such a leader in this field. And I think a lot of the new people in this space, Chris, don't really appreciate what you've done for all of our careers in this path. I mean, a lot of the things that we take for granted today, the approaches to social media, the mindset to an audience, you kind of figured that out. I mean, you were there at the beginning. A lot of the rules that we take for granted, you were there and you really set the pace. And I don't think people appreciate what you've really contributed to the field over the years. So first of all, I just want to thank you and thank you for your contribution and welcome you to the video here today.
Thank you. I'll tell you, I appreciate hearing that. It's also sort of funny because two things come right to mind when I hear it. One is that I was there first in a lot of ways, but that just means I'm like an old man now. It just means that, I got a lot of white in my beard.
Your words, not mine.
I hear you. But, the other thing is that when you are the forerunner in something, you're called wrong a lot and you're called dumb a lot.
And sometimes you were called wrong by me, by the way.
No question. And you know what? I'm still wrong.
We had some tussles over the years.
We have.
But I always admired you for pushing the edges and trying new things. You were always pushing the edges. And it's a lot of stuff we just take for granted today. So I appreciate you a lot, Chris. I really do.
Very kind of you. Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
So the topic today is personal branding. And in my new book, the content code, I tell a story in the book that got me thinking about the importance of personal branding in this overwhelming world of information density today. And I tell this story about how I was a young blogger trying to figure things out, and I was trying to write all this, great thought-provoking stuff. And I one time sent Chris a note. I don't know if he remembers this or not. I said, Chris, if you wrote a blog post called "I'm feeling gassy today," it would probably get tweeted 400 times. And he said, you're right, it would. And I challenge you to do it. You never did it. The world is poor for it. But the point is that you are a person who transcends content. You're a person who transcends SEO and social media because every person listening in today has a brand. Their company has a brand, but not everybody has a heroic brand where people love you and believe in you so much that they start sharing your content just because they love you and they support you. So at what point in your career did something kind of flip where you thought, I'm not just a blogger anymore. There's something else going on here. I feel this traction. I feel this, it's my term, the heroic brand. I'm not putting this on you. But at what point did you feel there's something different going on here? I'm discovering something new about myself and my power on the web.
Well, it was the day that I was bitten by a radioactive spider. And then there was a gamma radiation. There's a gamma radiation test that went off. I found out I was from a different planet that blew up and the little green stones got hurt.
Look what happened to me.
Wow. If I was less lazy, I would walk the 15 feet and go get mine. I have that. I love that mask. So the answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. Somewhere around 2005. So I started blogging in 98 when it was called journaling. Somewhere around 2005 or so is when I went, whoa, instead of just giving my opinion, what if I could come up with things that would be helpful to other people? And that's really, if there's any pin in the world, that's the pin. Is I was like, oh, what if I just gave everyone everything I was thinking?
And again, I want to highlight here, this philosophy is something we take for granted today, but Chris literally was a pioneer of this philosophy. And this was radically different for people to hear. And he was right.
I love the occasion when I am right. the other thing that I've never really figured out that there was something you were supposed to hold back. I always just told everyone everything. And then I figured that if someone wanted something more from me, they would say, you should come and we'll spend money on you. And most of the people that were kind of doing what they were doing at the time were like, I have to keep my secrets to myself. If I don't keep my secrets, I'm not going to make any money, or people will steal my thing or whatever. 100% of what I do, I just show people and hey, come get some. And then I can still say, and I've got this course that I sell and people will buy the course, or I've got a speech that I give and people will buy the speech. And so I was just having this talk with Michael Port yesterday for his little secret group. I was just saying the fact that 100% of the people that I'm friends with that are successful give away everything and still charge money and make money. 100% of the people I know who are struggling and having problems are worried someone's going to take their bread. And they're the ones who are always not making enough money and always having a problem. So I guess just by weird correlating data, I'm no Tom Webster, as you well know, but I can tell you that if I give away 100% and I make more money than the people who are trying to hold something back, I would just say you should try that idea.
Yeah. And, it's funny, just a couple of weeks ago, somebody approached me and they said, well, we're going to create this private group where we give, we're going to have your best ideas on business and helping small businesses. And we're going to create this paywall so people have to access it. I said, you don't understand. I give away everything I know, every idea, every thought I have, I put out on the blog or some piece of content. They said, no. The ones that you're really holding back. I said, no. I don't hold anything back. So I agree with that philosophy. I wanted to ask you a question, Chris. One of the more provocative statements you made when I interviewed you for the Content Code book was you said that your idea, and I think you've written about this too, your idea of personal branding is creating a system of creating allies. And the first time I saw that, I kind of got this like shivers, because that kind of implies like there's a war out there. So tell me a little bit more. Tell us today about your idea of building your personal brand through building these allies.
I had to use the word allies because I was using the word friend a lot. And it was actually something my fiance Jacqueline kind of pointed out one day. She goes, you call a lot of people your friend. And she goes, a lot of your friends are people you've never even met. Like there's got to be some other term. And I said, okay, ally. She goes, okay. And that was it. But when I say it, like allies in the war, to me, the war I'm fighting, my particular war, is against companies treating us like robots or treating us like we don't matter. I have said for a long time that the way I built my business is teaching people to treat my mom better, because I feel like if they treat her nice, then everybody else will be fine. Right. And so with regards to how that applies to branding and connecting with other people, I love the fact that pretty much anybody who wants to say something about me is going to say, oh yeah, he gave me this great idea one time, or he helped me out, or he introduced me to this person, or he barely knew me, but he said I should speak at such and such event and the people agreed. And I love that those are the stories that are going to be told around my coffin. And, I like not to die this week, but if I die next week, then it's okay. And that's the stories I want. And I would like very few of the stories to be like, man, I asked him for something and he said no. Mm-hmm. And so I guess that's sort of how I've always looked at it. And my only piece of advice that I've ever given, and probably the core of my brand, is just be helpful. Mm-hmm. It's not unlike Joel Comm, who's in the crowd right now, his do good stuff. I feel like if we're helpful, then people are going to want to be around us. And I think that that's going to open up so many more opportunities than any of the other ways that we can brand, mm-hmm. Do hustle or whatever, serve other people. The only time it ever comes into problem, Mark, is that there's a lot of times where people want to take and take and take. And I have a lot of trouble with that. And I have a lot of trouble even kind of handling that. So that's probably, that's my personal kryptonite.
One of the other ideas in the book that I introduced was this idea of the alpha audience. This is the group of people that are your most valuable, maybe allies is the right word. These are the people who share your content all the time. These are the people who are ultimately going to be creating business benefits for you. So what are some of the things that you do to nurture that special group? Maybe for you, it's your newsletter audience, but tell us a little bit about how you create your brand and you exert leadership among this special alpha audience.
So what I do the most, it probably is through my newsletter. And I would say that what I do the most is I try really hard to connect people amongst each other. I try really hard to share the spotlight all the time and shine it on others. And that was one of my 3 words for 2016 was shine, such that I could make sure that people, really understood who else was in this community that we share. And it's been an obsession of mine for a really long time. And it's actually one of those kind of rare things that Seth Godin and I very much, I've disagreed with him so many times, but he's right and I'm wrong, which is Tribes, the book Tribes. So, we need you to lead us. Basically, his point was, someone's got to be the leader of a tribe. And I've tried since 2005 to create these systems where I'm just the guy who started the ball rolling and everyone else is going to really pull with it, but it always fails. So what I do most as often as I can is try to make sure I see people. The Zulu greeting is Sawubona, I see you. And I think that in our world right now, the one thing we most feel is invisible. We feel not seen. And I think that the one thing you can do for more people than not is just take a 1.5 seconds of eye contact and make them feel like they know that they're seen.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's one of the themes I've been working on too, is how do I, you can't be a lazy marketer anymore. You can't just look at mentions, impressions, even sentiment. You've got to find the people behind that. And that's one of my challenges is to reach out and, just like you said, and really connect in some new way. You mentioned this idea of your 3 words for the year, which is another thing that I kind of picked up from you a few years ago. And I want to say, this is going to be weird that I remember this, but I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. One of your words was like kingly.
Yes. So I had to feel you were going to ask me. 2010, it was kings.
Something like that.
Because Marsha Collier told me to act more kingly.
That's right. And so when I saw this word, it didn't really make sense to me at the time. I was trying to figure out what that meant. But I mean, I think since then, I've kind of understood a little bit, and I'd like to just bounce this off of you in terms of personal branding and the web, that at some point, I'm surprised sometimes at how much people study me. And it's like they'll come up with these facts and these observations about me that I don't even know, or I didn't even remember. It's just like, wow. And it reminds me that I am under the microscope in some ways, and I need to raise my level. So that's how I interpreted this word, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. What did that mean to you at that time? And what does it mean to you today?
So at the very moment that Marsha was telling me about it, it was because that every time someone had a complaint or a gripe, I would very willingly go right into the mud with them and be like, oh yeah, well, you're a poopy face. And, she said, that's not what kings do. Kings say, thanks, peasants, and just wave them on and call it a day. And she didn't say peasants. That's just my favorite. But the act of being kingly is, so kings are people of service. Now, usually at this moment, some big history buff will say, no, they're not. They're assholes. But in my world, because I create my own, kings are really nice and they're sweethearts. And what their job is to serve their kingdom, and they try to look out for, how do I provide? How do I make sure everyone's fed? How do I make sure my queen and my family and the other people in the larger kingdom are handled? There's a great book that I'm totally blanking on by Pressfield. It's about, oh no. Anyway, I'll get there. But it's about tribalism as well, though. And in that experience, what I learned in reading that is that, tribes aren't necessarily positive or good things. It means that it's us versus them. And so another thing about being kingly is that you're not meant to please everyone. You're there to serve your kingdom. You're not there to make all the kingdoms happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my version of branding, I no longer care if people hate me. Like, it's fine. If somebody doesn't like what I do, I show them the unsubscribe button so fast, it's magical. And I think that what that affords me, Mark, is it affords me the ability to just really love on the people who want to be served by the way that I know how to serve them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been an important lesson for me too. Is this, you know, when the haters show up, it's like, oh well, you know, that's part of the territory. You have to take the privilege of having an opportunity to be in this kind of a position where you have an audience that respects you and trusts you. And some people, they, you know, it might be part of their psychology. It might be something that they're struggling with that they take out on you. I mean, when people rant, I always try to think about, look, you know, don't take it personal, because you don't know what's going on with them right now. I mean, you don't know what's happened to them in their lives. You don't know what brought them to this place. Just try to be patient. Just try to have empathy, and, just try to lift people up as much as you can.
A really successful, outwardly successful mutual friend of ours once was really upset with me, and for no real reason except that the person felt that maybe, well, a lot of people feel this, that I very unjustly have access to a lot of times people say lots of really nice things about me, and lots of times people put me on a stage where I really shouldn't be there and I didn't have the right to be there, etc. And this person was just really upset. And we finally had the opportunity to sort of sit next to each other at an event in a very weird place. And when we talked, it turned out the problem that this person had was they were experiencing horrible financial pain. They were really at the bottom of their game, and they were just having a tough time. And the way they looked over at me was that life was beautiful and everything was great. And I was, a millionaire. And I was like, first off, I live in a 955 square foot house. My car, although a Camaro, is covered in dents, that I put every single one of them. Well, I put a third of them in there myself. And then the people at Logan Airport gave me some for free. I didn't even have to pay for those.
Nice.
And so, my life isn't exactly magical all the same time, but when that person got a chance to sort of see me really inches away, they had the chance to say, oh, I guess he's not who I had built him up to be. He's just a regular human, and he poops and pees just like me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting is how do you scale that connection broadly? I think that's a challenge for all of us as humans in this system, and also as companies and brands in this system, is how do we show our heart, and how do we show the people behind these companies and the people behind the brands? I often end my my speeches with some advice that was given to me by Dr. Robert Cialdini. I was interviewing him for a book, and he's a great academic and one of the smartest guys I've ever known. And I said, Dr. Cialdini, in this very, very noisy world, how do you stand out today? And he said, be more human. And every single day, Chris, I think about this as I'm immersed in this world. I know how simple, profound, and how right he was. And I often tell people the most human company will win. Everything you do, every filter that you have on your social media presence and your content is force yourself. How do we be more human? And it's interesting to see how brands are starting to live that and starting to show their hearts. Would you agree that we're moving in that direction?
So right after I renamed my company Human Business Works, because no one seemed to understand what the hell I was talking about, then the world goes, oh, human. I get it. So yeah, always the day early and $1 short. And so I can tell you that people are starting to get it, but what they're also, to your point, they don't get quite how to do it. And so I am forever hired by really wonderful companies that are like, we believe you, now what? And so for example, I was with a bunch of people who do medical imaging technology. So ultrasounds and things, by the way, so one of the things they can do is they can show you very vividly Alzheimer's. Here you go. Here's Alzheimer's, like in your brain. And no one could really quite understand because like doctors were like, yeah, we already know. But no one could understand what's the value of it. And I said, what do you think? The value is you get a husband and wife sitting in the room and the wife's been acting a little odd. And, you know, you're just going to say Alzheimer's there. It's all over the place. But now you can show this very vivid image of this brain and say, look, here's what's going on inside you. This is the enemy. And there's not a lot we could do at this time. You know, medicine isn't really great for this yet, blah, blah, blah. But this, and humans all want the same thing. Humankind's greatest need is the need to feel wanted. Right. And so, and we want to know that people care about us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And even the most introverted of us who would love to be left alone all day wants someone to every now and again go, I love you though.
Yeah.
And so all we have to do is how do we articulate that for the various businesses that we get to work with, and how do we get to articulate that? And if we don't love the people we're serving, maybe we're the wrong business, or maybe we're the wrong people at the helm, because every business should have some little tiny sense of love in it, even if it's the registry of motor vehicles.
Yeah. And the irony is that you go and a lot of the big companies I work with, they've got their mission statement on the wall. And usually the word love isn't in there, but usually the word customer is at the top, or the people that we serve is right at the top. And I love your analogy about the visual representation of Alzheimer's. It's a little trick I've been doing recently with some of my customers. I went in, I don't think I can really talk about the name of the company, but it's a great, huge pharmaceutical company. And I went into their company, and all down the walls, they had these pictures of how they've helped their patients. And it was like burn patients and people that have lost limbs. And you walk down this wall and you want to cry. And then I showed them, so I took a picture of the wall. Then I went into the meeting. I showed the picture of the wall. And I said, this shows your heart. This shows incredible love. This is your mission statement. Then I showed them a picture of their website. It looked like it was an engineering firm. I said, look, the heart is on the wall. Why aren't you putting this wall out into where the world can see it? And within 6 months, they did a complete redesign, because it's so funny, Chris. They're not, they live it. They breathe it. It's not just words, but you're afraid to show it in this business world. I think that's part of the hurdle we have to get over today.
Yeah, I've been sort of sneaking that into speeches a little bit lately. I say that no one here really wants to believe that the problems are really exactly based on two things: problems with fear and problems with love. And nothing makes people, and I'll say especially men, more twitchy. And you know, me calling them afraid, or me saying that they have love problems. You know, you might as well just say, well, let's all pull our pants down next, right? Because like you couldn't be much more uncomfortable. And yet it's true, right? So look,
man, I can't wait. I got the headline for the blog post now, Chris.
Let's pull our pants down.
Man, I'm going to get the best SEO in the world now.
No question.
Thank you.
No question. That's the thing. The one flaw I have in my sensibilities is that I am insanely tweetable for something I don't really want to be tweeted for, and not tweetable for the great idea. But I'll say, Mark, one of the things that I want to say about the fear and love thing, though, is that, so I've been doing that with people's websites lately. I'll say, let's look at how much of your about page is based on your fear that people think you're not good enough, the fear that people think that you don't deserve what you're doing, the fear that you think your job isn't that important. And so you've stuffed your about page with lots of words that you think are going to make you seem smarter. Mm-hmm. And if I rip out all the fear words out of somebody's about page, for instance, it's amazing how much.
That's such an interesting perspective, Chris. I hadn't really thought about that before. I like that. Ripping out the fear words of yeah. What do they call that when you? It's this. A lot of people have been talking about this lately. When you're a poser. What is it? The poser syndrome or something?
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah, and to me, it's like people have asked me, well, don't you feel like you have imposter syndrome sometimes? I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I've worked hard to be here. I've had a long career. I've worked hard to be here. I feel very comfortable being in a place where I'm, on a stage or talking to you today. So, so I love that is like extracting the imposter syndrome from people's websites. Boy, that's a powerful insight.
Thank you. I think that with all of us, I always just feel like I don't deserve to be anywhere that I am. And I think it works better. I'm forever in these situations, I'm the places I find myself, Steve Harvey once introduces me to a crowd full of radio marketing executives. And I'm like, why are you introducing me? Like, you're the star. I'm like a turd head. No one here knows me. Everyone here knows you.
Turd head. That's one of those words we could probably remove, Chris.
There you go. I know. But then, in all of those cases, the only thing that I can tell you I'm the little drummer boy. So all I can tell you is I bring something that people seem to want. And then what they want most times is they want the most powerful thing you could give anyone, even though it's a drug and not a food, is the mirror. You are beautiful. Wow, you're good. Wow, you're amazing. And that is my drug that I deal.
Well, we're unfortunately, this is just blown by. We're closing out on our time here, and there was one last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of personal branding and shifts we're seeing in the web, and it's really interesting to see how a lot of this influence marketing is going mainstream, and I think there's certainly a place for it. I think people have worked hard to build these engaged audiences, and if there's some way you can reasonably and authentically kind of become associated with that, I think there's power. I saw a characterization in an article, and unfortunately I can't remember where this was written, but the guy was predicting that the real power on the web is going to come from influencer curators. And I was kind of thinking about that a little bit. And I thought, that's kind of an interesting, in this noisy world, the attention moving to the influencer curators. Just wondered if you had a reaction to that.
I hate that idea. I hate that idea because
let's disagree.
It's gross, influencer curator. So that means
do you hate the whole influencer idea?
I think we do it wrong.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
I think hundreds of thousands of followers doesn't mean influencer. Look, Chevrolet has given me, I don't know how many Cadillacs, and said, Chris, you say you like Cadillac. You should help us sell Cadillacs. Mm-hmm. And then they do everything they can to make it so I can't sell a Cadillac. All they really want me to do is take photos of me at like drive-in movies with a Cadillac. That's bullshit. That's it's bullpucky. That's not influencing. And, But when you can influence, like I'll give you the exact opposite example. Staples came out to me, and Staples was like, "Oh, we'd love to work with you." I'm like, "I love Staples. I've been going there since I was a young guy." And they were like, "Yes." And I can influence people to spend money on Staples because I can tell you inside and out what I know about that brand. Yeah. And so that's what good influencers are. Good influencers are people who are already super passionate about something, and you've just married what audience that they have access to with something that they can help with. Yeah. Influencer curators, I would rather it be more like an influencer guide or something, because curator means I've collected. And curator is like when people try to get me on their podcast by saying, I've interviewed Mark, I've interviewed Brian and Mitch and whatever. Yeah. Now I want to interview you. That's like, I've slept with these 6 people and I think I could probably bang you too. That is not
another headline for the blog post.
That's not influencing. That's whoring. So I just think that I don't like curator. I like guide, but I would say that it's probably this scenario where we could definitely, I think influencers are where that is. That's Word of Mouth Marketing Association. I think that people have been screaming this stuff for 20 years. I think it's just finally where content and influence meet. Yeah. I think that's some beauty stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chris, thanks so much for your time today. I'm mindful of the clock, and this has been just a delight and a pleasure. And so thank you so much again. Thanks for everything that you do. Of course, I think most people probably know how to find you on the web, but for anybody that's new out there, just starting to learn about you and your contribution to our field, tell people where they can find out more about you.
Oh, probably easier just to start at chrisbrogan.com, or if you don't know how to spell my name, just owner.media, either one.
Yep. All right, Chris, thanks so much. And thanks everyone for listening in today.
Thank you.